Okay, so my name is Lloyd, and I started and now still run this website called aescripts+aeplugins. We actually suffer from not the best name because we started small as a scripting platform, and now we've grown into a bigger thing. So what Nicholas asked me to do is to kind of share the story with you guys of how all of this came about. And so what we're going to do is start a long, long time ago, before aescripts. Interestingly enough, I hadn't actually really paid attention to when aescripts was started until you and I talked, and you started planning the 10-year, I'll get closer to the mic, planning the 10-year anniversary for Do It. So turns out we also started in 2009. So we're also celebrating our 10-year anniversary. But now I'm also realizing I'm not as organized as you are. You are really good at executing your ideas, and that's really an important topic that I'm going to touch on. So before I was into doing this whole scripting thing, I was in order of how I got things done here. I was first a designer, and then getting your designs animated was really cool, so designer animator. And then as I started getting more senior, I became an art director, and then finally a creative director, which is somebody who manages creative work, which is a really interesting skill, which turned out, I think I was better as a creative director than I was as a designer animator. I think I had really difficult time judging myself. I was much better at giving criticism to other people than I was to myself. So just to show you some examples of things that I did a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Things that you might have watched. This is the opening for the show Entourage on HBO that I worked on in, I think, 2004.
Superhero, or even if I tumble fall, I'm okay. You know I need you wanna be your superhero.
So, as I said, I was working in New York as a designer, animator, creative director, freelancer, and jobs like that Entourage job was the what usually came in. You would work with a designer, with an advertising agency, or in this case, a network like HBO, and then we would do a combination of not just After Effects, but like Maya, and where it wasn't even called Maya back then, but the Flame, and all kinds of things, and bring. As a creative director, you kind of oversaw the entire production, and so I became really familiar with all the different pieces of the production. But for some reason, then I started working at various other shops and doing other really sort of cool high-end work. And the reason I'm pointing out specifically SciOp here is because SciOp worked in very high-end 3D, and they had internal tools that they used to facilitate their workflow. So they used, I wouldn't say they were scripts, but they were actually applications that helped facilitate. So here's an example of a job that I did at SciOp. So the way SciOp worked is we did all of that compositing in After Effects, and they would render out hundreds of passes, literally, in 3D, and then you had to sort of put it all together. And After Effects was really not designed for 3D compositing, and so this is where the ideas started coming in of like, how can I make my life a little bit easier? So also, Nicholas sent me some questions in advance, so I tried to incorporate them into the presentation so that we don't have to ask them afterwards. So how did I start coding for After Effects, and did I know JavaScript? I'll answer in reverse order. I did not know JavaScript before. I was never really formally trained in programming, but I did have a Commodore 64 as a young kid, and the Commodore 64, to interact with it, you had to write a basic program. So you would say 10 space print, and then go to 20, and it was kind of cool. And I guess I didn't really realize it until later, but that set my brain, I guess, in a way of thinking about it. And I obviously also speak several languages, and the learning programming, I guess, felt easier than I've now encountered for other people. It seems that I guess your brain needs to be a certain way. So the way I started coding for After Effects was actually, I actually did not write the first. I'm going to credit Dan Eberts for the first script, but I actually hired Dan to do it. I'm not really sure if this is the first one, but this was a really long time ago, so I'm pretty sure it's the first one. But working at one of these agencies, we had to do a redesign for A&E as a TV network in the United States. Biography is was one of their like sub networks, and what was happening is budgets, and this still happens to this day, budgets kept getting smaller and smaller, but they kept wanting to have more and more work. And so this is, what used to take a lot of time was creating all of the different versions of the things. So for this particular, I'll show you this is not the best designed piece, but it's the first.
Simon will do what Simon wants.
He's saying what's on his mind.
He was always very determined and, yeah, a difficult boy.
I was actually called the Antichrist of the music industry.
Very pleasant. He's just a warm guy.
He does have a vulnerable side.
I think it's more kind to be blunt with people.
Okay, so the important thing here is that they needed to create hundreds of these things for hundreds of different celebrities, and they aired on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and stuff. And so they had to create this thing, but for all of these different versions. And back in 2004, the way that would work is one person would get on a computer and they would do all the versions. But that didn't work with the budget that they had. And so this is, After Effects had just introduced scripting, and I knew that we could potentially tap into this. So I hired Dan Eberts to write this very early expression / script thing, and these were the instructions that we delivered with the thing. So you literally like edited the expression source text field with the name of the artist, and then you would move the scale slider. I mean, this might all seem really duh now, but back then this was like. It was so much so that we had to really like break it down for people, for the artists, right? Like I made this graphic. I can't believe I actually found all this stuff, by the way. This is really fascinating. But like type sentence here, right? So this is before you could have a UI, and I'm sure one of the things I really enjoyed about your presentation is how your UI evolved, right? Because one of the things that you start learning as you start developing software is that UX, they call it, user experience, is really, really important. Actually, maybe I'll give you an interesting side story. When I was strictly a designer or even an art director, whether we did the job correctly was always very subjective, meaning like people either like the piece or they don't like the piece. And some people love the piece and some people hate the piece. And it doesn't mean the piece is good, Doesn't mean the piece is bad. It just means some people feel that way about it and some people don't. I don't know why this keeps switching. I guess I really never had really had complete satisfaction of having known that I did something correctly with art until I got into programming, and I realized that you can be working on this program that's not working, it has a bug in it, and you are working on it all night, and it doesn't work, and you try different things, and you're looking at it, and in your brain it looks correct, and you go, why is this not working? I'm sure you can relate to this. And then you keep working, and finally you figured out the problem, and it suddenly works, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're by yourself, you're in your underwear, and that feeling of, oh my God, it works, it's correct, you know, it's so binary, it just suddenly works. And so when I first got the taste of that feeling of, wow, like it actually just works. Nobody needs to tell me that they like it or don't like it. I just know it works, which was such a contrast to this art direction process, which is so subjective. And so I think that was my drug. That was like, wow, I tasted that feeling of ultimate, like, nobody needs to kind of approve my work. I can just see it works. Now, of course, I realized later on, and now we're talking about UX, there is art in code and art in UX. But early on, that was like really the most amazing feeling of knowing that it worked. All right, so yeah, some more instructions here. All right, so once I tasted this concept of being able to manipulate a lot of data through coding, my brain, sort of my design brain expanded a little bit, and I said, so if we can start using code to help us manage a lot of data, we started designing other cool sort of work. And in this case, this particular piece, we actually didn't actually use that much coding. We used particular, interestingly enough, a particle generator to deal with all of the data. But in a way, it's still managing a lot of data with a tool that helps you manage it. So as Nicholas asked me to prepare this talk, and I was like, me myself trying to walk myself through, I was like, how did I end up in this place? I'm now starting to see it by realizing that the things that I started becoming interested in had a lot to do with this new discovery that I was making and what really felt interesting to me, and so I kind of went down that path. So then we really started, once I got the taste of Dan Everts helping us write a script, I basically opened up the scripting interface and started making really simple scripts, like, for example, being able to take a lot of layers and distribute them in 3D space, which is then we did this piece. This is all around 2004, 2005, to give everybody a timeline. Obviously, I was so excited to be able to write these little scripts that like were making my life easier. And because I was a manager, I was a creative manager, I had a team of designers that were working in After Effects and being extremely inefficient. They would not even use keyboard shortcuts, right? They would like go to like a menu and I would look at them and I would realize, oh my God, it took you 2 hours to do something that could have been done in 15 minutes because you're so inefficient. Hey, next time that you need to distribute 100 layers in 3D space, run this script here that I just wrote, and it'll get done in 2 seconds. And then I would give it to them, and then they would come back and it would be like, yeah, it doesn't work. And I'd be like, well, you didn't listen to what I was saying. You need to like come here and then enter this. And he goes, I did enter that. And I look at it and I go, oh, it needs a semicolon. You know, like I realized that these scripts worked when somebody who knew what they were doing was around to help do it. But of course, in the New York freelancer community and the design community that I worked in, the word started spreading that I had these tools, and back then we all used the AOL chat. I don't know if you guys even remember, this is before like proper internet. And we all kind of had our little thing, and so you would get a little like AOL chat, hey, can I get that script that like helps distribute the things in 3D space? Sure, man, here you go. I would upload it an hour later. It doesn't work. And I would like, that's when I realized, I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I have to invest more time in making sure that the tool is usable by people, because otherwise what's the point? And I was also very much into sharing the work and making, because at the time, I never even considered that these scripts were gonna become my future. At the time, it was strictly, and I feel that maybe you have a similar story, that you created your tool to help you make your films, right? Like, and to be honest, and now that I curate tools coming into our platform, the best tools are the ones that are created by people who have real jobs and are using the tool for their real world problems. When it's like a programmer who's just a really good programmer who just is like bored and he's like, oh, what can I do now? And I'm gonna create a tool just because I can program it, those tools end up not being so great. So I wanted to share these tools, and I realized that I had to get better about how I packaged the tools, but I knew so little about programming. And to be honest, the UI part was the most difficult part early on, and so I didn't even want to touch with the UIs. The early scripts, you had to open up in a text editor, and like I said, you know, make sure you don't forget the semicolon, and it's so easy to make mistakes there that it really was. It was a little frustrating because I wanted to share it, but I also didn't have the time to do the tech support and all this other stuff. So then I was freelancing at a company called Trollback, also in New York, and they got tasked with creating the video content for what at the time was going to be the world's largest video wall. It was in a new Frank Gehry building that was being built on the west side of Manhattan. And I also realized that I get bored very easily. I'm always looking for new, exciting things to do. And when you're working in this sort of 30-second commercial world, and then they would hire you because they would see something on your demo reel, and they would say, oh, I want you to do this, but for my brand. And that just was easy, but it was not as exciting and exhilarating. So when they asked me to work on this project, I thought, wow, this is really exciting, because not only are we not creating a 30-second commercial, but the challenges for creating content in this new dimension, and also, you know, it was also going to be the highest resolution. So you could be, I know today, for example, that this projector looks really high res, but like back in the day, if you stood next to it, you saw big pixels. And then you had to go back and then you could see it. So this particular video wall was so big, you couldn't see it all at once inside the building. So the building had window walls, and then you could see it from across the street, and then you could see the whole thing. So part of the design challenge was designing something that looked good really close up, like almost pixelated, and then also looked really good really far away when you could see the whole thing. So I was only able to find this montage video that sort of summarizes. It's going to show you the building and the video wall. So that was the building, and it went away quickly, and then, and so you can see here that it's in the building lobby. So yeah, it was obviously the IAC corporate building. So the other challenge was how to make pretty pictures while still making their brand sell, and that was another thing. But anyway, what was really exciting about this project was that we suddenly had a million ideas, and we wanted to try all this stuff, but it had to be one seamless thing. And we tried doing seaming, like rendering things in pieces, and it wasn't working for various reasons. So what we ended up doing is we created one After Effects comp that had, I think the limit is 30,000 pixels. So that is a 30,000 pixel comp that goes from one side to the other. And so once I rendered like 1 or 2 frames and that was successful, we were super excited. And we were like, oh my God, all our ideas are gonna be executed. And I don't know if you noticed, but we even had like big particle things, and we did like photography and all this other stuff. The problem was that we had to get this ready by, we'll say, December 1st, and it was, we'll say, mid-October or something. And then I timed what it was taking one frame to render, and we did the math on how many of these different modules we were doing times how much each frame for each one. And we go, okay, so the good news is that we will be able to render this. The bad news is it's going to be done in 2020. And so that was not great news. And we could not send this to a render farm because the requirement was so unique that no render farms were able to accommodate comps of this size. And so that's when I knew that you could render in the background using the command line in After Effects, which is also a feature that most people did not know about. And so that's when I just started looking into it, and it started with a text file that had a copy and paste thing that I would just pass around to the artists, and they would try it, and they would say, it doesn't work. So I would have to go over there, and I'd be like, no, it's because the comp name has to be here. You can't, things that seem so obvious to me, but just the artists just constantly were not getting it right. And so based on my limited scripting that I had started with the other things, I was like, maybe I can create a script that can just create this literally one line, one text line, and send it to the command line. And that's when this background renderer was born. And again, it was this internal tool designed to make this job work. Because once I did the math, I said, if the computers are all rendering all day, 24 hours, we're going to make the deadline. But normally you would have to stop during the day because we gotta keep working. And I said, we can keep working and it can keep rendering. It was like a crazy concept at the time, but and so this is when I looked into scripting UI because the the code was really quite simple. It was all about getting this UI that it could select the comp and you could send the button and stuff. And so I did it. And man, this was like, it was like I invented sliced bread, you know, like I invented the wheel. People were just like, oh my God. They basically thought I invented background rendering. And I did not invent background rendering. All I did was create a tool that opened the door to this thing that was already there. But even to this day, people think I invented background rendering, literally. So it just goes to show that if you create a good tool and it's easy to use, people are going to really, really want to use it. And it was also a really empowering feeling because I was like, also used to like advertising agencies that every time they came with feedback, it was like problems and we don't like this and you got to change that and it's going to be done by this. And you then release something like this and people just think you are like the next Jesus, you know, they're like, oh my God, you're amazing, this is amazing, oh my God. And so that also, that feeling that I had of that feedback was something that I could not, really could not explain. And so, so this is where I'm going to start showing you guys. So then I had already established that AOL chat was not a good way to distribute the things. So I had to create a website to put this thing once I created the UI. So the first, well, actually, sorry, yeah, before the website, there was a website, there still is a website called AE Enhancers. But back then, this is in 2007. Although I got this off the web archive, so it might not be correct date, but probably 2006, 2007, this is how you would release. As a matter of fact, you had a slide from a Seb post from AE Enhancers where I saw my name listed at the bottom. This is how you release things. It was a chat, a forum, and you would create a new topic, and you would say, here's my script, this is what it does, and you can download it, you know, on this link here. And, you know, oh, I guess I had already registered the domain, but again, this is later in time, so. And then if people had problems, they would post the thing here, and then you would fix the problems, and then you would, because you could not really edit the initial post, you would have to go make another post, you know, down over here, and then you'd have a separate download link. And so what was happening is that people were downloading the wrong thing, and they would have the old version, and the whole thing was starting to be a total mess. And then, of course, other really talented scripters, which I think there was probably 8 of them in the entire world, said one of them here, and you, but we weren't connecting then. We're also releasing really cool things, not just on AE Enhancers, but on their like own private websites, and people were like asking me, they were like, hey, by the way, can I also get that other tool that does this? And I'm like, oh, well, that's not my tool. You know, oh, well, where can I get it? I was like, oh, okay, well, you got to go to this French guy's website, and you got a thing. And I know the website's in French, but just scroll down to the bottom and on the right, and you'll see the download link, and then they would come back and it was like, I can't find it. So that's when I said, all right, okay, let's see, what can we do about this? So then in 2008, I, on a whim, Googled to see if aescripts.com was available. Oh, because I thought, I had this idea, I was like, oh, no, okay, sorry. I did build my own website first, and I was just listing the websites here. This is the first one here. So I would have the post, and then you would have the download link here, and then completely different place over here on the left. I want you to notice the very attractive beer mug icon, which I was really excited about because I was, who can just say no to that? Because look at the comments, right? Like, thank you so much, works perfectly, this is gonna save me lots of time. Much beer coming your way soon. The beer never came. And so the other thing, though, the other problem that was happening is that as the tool was becoming more popular, and I had this like budget website hosting that charged for bandwidth, and because we were downloading videos and all this other stuff, it was starting to cost money. And I thought, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to sustain this in this manner for much longer. So that's when I had this idea of like, let's solve several problems. Let's get together, and there were, like I said, there was probably 8 or 10 guys around the world that were active on enhancers, and for various reasons, through my, escapades into scripting, I said to everybody, I said, listen, can we, how do you guys feel if I got the domain aescripts.com, but I don't want it to be about me. How do you guys feel if you put your tools on my site, or sorry, our site, important detail. And this was part of also the design, that it was not Lloyd Alvarez's site, it was like aescripts.com, and the developer was always very clearly identified. And the biggest question that came, the biggest sort of question was like, okay, so who's going to pay for it? And I said, well, we can come up with a system where, we can, because at the time we were all, some of them weren't even asking for donations. Some of them were just literally like putting out an A enhancers, like I had done originally. There was no donate button or anything. How are we going to pay for it? And I said, well, if we can somehow figure out how to get a little bit of money, we can split up the money, and then we can pay for the hosting, all this other stuff. And we quickly realized that this was actually a really bigger problem than I had anticipated. And that's around the same time that Radiohead released their new album, and they released it as Name Your Own Price. And I had never encountered this before. So you would go to their website, and you would go to download or go to buy the album, and it said, how much does it cost? And they would have a page that would say, well, it's up to you. And then you'd click, and it was such a foreign concept that they actually repeated it, and they said, no, it really is up to you. And then you went to the shopping cart, and you literally entered your price. Now, this is at a time where it was still a physical CD that was going to be shipped to you. I guess there was also a download option, but this was a really crazy concept. And being a Radiohead fan, I would have probably bought their new album anyway, no matter what. I wouldn't even have thought about it. But this sudden, I felt power that they gave to me to decide this thing made me feel really good. I had a really good feel when I went through this process. I really felt good about it, and it also got me to pay what I felt I was going to donate. At the time, I don't remember if I donated the full amount. I probably did not. I probably paid a little bit less because I was just not a very rich guy, but I felt really good about that money that I gave, and I realized that had it just been a download link and then pay the money later, I thought to myself, I probably would not have paid it. So, and what we were experiencing with that Buy Lloyd a Beer separately is that the donation rate, as you also experienced in your talk, was extremely low. I mean, it was something like 0.0000001%. And I don't know if you've done the math on your donation rate, but it was probably something similar. In 2009, 10 years ago, I'm now realizing, I got enough of these guys to come together, and then I said, the way we're going to do the money is we're going to adopt this name your own price idea. So the software can still be free for people that want to download it for free, but people who want to pay, they're going to pay. And we're not going to be creepy about it. We're not going to like force you to register and give us your credit card in advance or any of that stuff. If you enter 0, then you'll just get a download link. It's as simple as that. But if you do want to pay, then we'll go through the normal process of like, you can go ahead and enter your credit card and whatnot. So so this was the first version of it. And so as you can see here at the front, I was really concerned about this not being about me. I really wanted it to feel like this was about the group of people who were contributing it. So this is the initial group of guys, and as you can see, unfortunately, the add to cart thing doesn't work here because it was JavaScript. But you would click and this was an important distinction that in order to download it for free, you had to go through this process that Radiohead did, right? Where you had to like say, I'm going to name my price to 0. And I know that sometimes that might feel like I get like a guilty push, but the result of that is we went from this 0.000000% to 20% donation rate in the very first month, which was mind-blowing. I mean, all of the guys couldn't believe it. Nobody could believe it. It was like, it was really such an eye-opening thing. But the best part is that the feedback from people was, you guys are the best. This is so great. Oh my God, I can't believe you're letting us name our own price. Like, it was really like and the other important thing that we were trying to do, and that was important to me, is that I was trying to improve the experience of actually getting and using scripts. Because, like I said, when it was on the forums, you would just click to download, and then it wouldn't work, and then maybe the author would fix it, maybe they wouldn't fix it. Here, as you can see, it said, there's a demo video you can watch. It explains very clearly, sort of a more professional, what versions of After Effects it's compatible with. And then, of course, if you had problems, there was also a method for you to submit your concerns. And what I found is that when there was suddenly a revenue stream, the developers were a lot more excited or motivated to fix the problems. It seemed like the problems were getting fixed much faster because suddenly I don't know, it just like it felt more public or whatever it is that we were doing. So the other thing is that I never really planned on it being more than that initial group of people, because I actually felt scripting at the time seemed like something really hard to do. And I was like, these are the 10 most intelligent people in the world, and that's going to be it. And that's going to be the end of it. And me, myself, I was like, I had come up with some other really clever tools like Zorro and Magnum and stuff, and I was like, I can't imagine I'm going to have any better ideas than this, because it felt so crazy cool, But that was not the case at all. Once we built this platform and we made it clear that it was open to anybody, people started coming. And so it actually kind of forced me to have to build systems to be able to handle all of this new thing, because at the time I was still working full-time as an artist. This whole After Effects, aescripts thing was something I was doing on the side, and I couldn't dedicate full-time. As a matter of fact, because I was a freelancer and I had a day rate that I charged, so if you wanted to hire me, I said this was my day rate, I decided once I can earn enough money to pay for one day of my day rate, I can officially not work one day on the normal work and work one full day on aescripts. And that's how I actually slowly became full-time aescripts. It took many years, but it was day by day. It was like a big celebration every day. I could drop a day of the other work. And then the other thing that was kind of cool is that I started attracting plugin developers that were not big companies. They were not Red Giant, They were little guys who just figured out how to do the C++ SDK, which is really much harder than the scripting one. And so I looked for aeplugins.com, and it was actually already taken. But I emailed the guy, and the guy was like, "Oh my God, you can totally have it. I love what you're doing." And he's an After Effects guy, and that was a really cool experience. And so that's when we changed the name to aescripts plus aeplugins, because we never forget that we got started with scripts, but I also want to let people know that we're more about. And as a matter of fact, the other big change we've done is we've not capitalized the AE part, so that it's like, if you have a Cinema 4D plugin, you can put it here too. Although we are mainly After Effects tools. Okay, so then we're doing really great. Name Your Own Price was a really big success, but I realized now that, especially now that I was dedicating time, I was looking at how much money was coming in for the Name Your Own Price tools, and I really wanted to. Immigration was this tool that for the PSYOP job where like we could manage tons and tons of files, was really going to take a lot of my time. And so this is when I experimented, okay, let's see what happens if we have one tool that is not name your own price, that you're going to have to pay a fixed price. Okay, so yeah, so here's the example of a plugin with now we're After Effects plugins, it's for After Effects scripts. And then so now this is the very first tool that we released that suddenly it wasn't that name your own price, but you actually, paid a license, and it was $40, which was actually really expensive compared to what people were paying. So it was like a big leap of faith that we put out there. But it was a huge success. Suddenly, I realized that this tool was making so much more money than the other tools that it actually allowed me to, and to this day, we very much focus on still releasing many, many name your own price tools. Because I feel that to use your sort of community metaphor is that the popular tools help the not popular tools, but the name your own price tools also attract traffic for people who came from those tools who then discover the other tools. And so we feel that it's been a nice, cool, like symbiotic relationship. And then finally, in 2012, we sort of started getting big enough. I had built the first website. I had no idea how to build websites. I was like, okay, this has got to be fixed. And now we actually had money coming in, so we could dedicate it to getting a professional website built. And we did. And I also, we had enough really fans that Ariel Costa, which is this amazing Brazilian designer, helped us make this really cool promo welcoming the new site. So as we started growing, and especially once we released a new website, which suddenly looked like a professional website, again, a really important thing that I've been battling, and we still battle this to this day, is that because the tools are made by less experienced developers, it's more likely to have problems. And so this idea that you can rely on this in a professional production is something that because I've been on the other end of it, I understood how important your sales pitch is, right? How your facade, how you appear to people, and so having the new website, which is what you're familiar with today, was a big leap forward to make it feel, more professional. And when we launched this, we also saw a huge jump in growth. And so this idea of, and of course I shared my what happened with this immigration one, and so I've never encouraged anybody to go licensed. I've always supported the free models. But I did want to let people know that if you wanted to, especially because a lot of developers now do this full time, that having something that is paid only will help you sort of monetize it. And there was Nabbed was one of the early authors he was actually the one that really pushed on this concept that he would only comment aescripts if it was free. And so once we pushed the name your own price, he said, okay, this is cool. And then after 4 or 5 years of doing this, he now started releasing paid-only tools. And he partnered with Valentin, which you guys have met. They created Newton, which is, again, an amazing tool that I don't know if could have survived completely on its as a name your own price. So what's really amazing about Newton is that it really pushed the boundaries of what people thought was possible to do in After Effects. And even though this was the most expensive tool we'd ever released on our platform, the cost for the plugin for a perpetual license still is less than what most artists would charge for 1 day of work. And this is just like what an artist would charge. Companies, who make a lot more money, and the agency and stuff, all really obviously thought it was cheap, right? It was like a no-brainer. So being able to release a tool like this was sort of exciting in that way. And then I also wanted to sort of talk on this other end of like, well, especially because I'm so motivated by what you've been doing, and I also feel open source is an extremely important movement. I personally have benefited from it because I learned so much stuff from open source, and had open source not been available, I probably would not have been able to learn my stuff. And so, in our little experiment of how do you marry the both worlds is you mentioned Body Moving, which is this open source tool, and the developer of Body Moving approached me because he liked what we were doing with our platform. We have a big reach, and he's like, how can I be on your platform? But he said, but being open source is extremely important to me, and I don't want to force everybody to have to come through this name your own price, similar to what you were mentioning. And so what we came up for them is he just continued having his, interestingly enough, Airbnb licensed this technology. So now it's called Airbnb Lottie, but it's still his open source project, which is called Body Moving. So he still has his GitHub page, which is the way you used to download it before. And so when you just come down here and to the explanations, all he did is he basically gives you 3 options of how you can install it. And interestingly enough, and I didn't ask him to do this, we used to be option number 3. And we've now become option number 1 because I think he's realized that he's now getting well, anyway, so you click here and then you go over to our site where it's the same name, your own price concept, right? And then here, of course, you can still enter 0 and I should log out to this so you can see that. Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, you can just say, I already explained that we don't ask for any of this stuff. But the other thing that we also realize is that when large companies have to buy software, they can't just use open source software. They need a license agreement, which is something else that we offer as part of this service. So when you hit here in the license terms, you can sort of understand what the licenses are. And so then the companies pay the $20 per license, and then they have this like agreement that allows them to use the thing. But the open source thing continues being open source, and this just allows. And then again, there's so many users who come to a web page like this and go, okay, I'm out. And it's true. It's unfortunately true. And this is the other thing that was a big thing that we worked on was to just try and make it friendly. As a matter of fact, I told him that I would not put this on our site until he made a promo, because there was no promo, there was no video. And I said, we don't accept tools without promos. So he put this together. And, So if you're an After Effects artist or a designer and somebody tells you, oh, you got to check out this body moving thing, and then you go here and you're like, okay, but you instead come here and you watch that little video and you're like, oh yeah, that's cool, I'll check it out, right? Like, so that was the idea, is just to sort of facilitate that process. Okay, so back to the questions. So the economic model for aescripts. So the interesting, the fascinating and sad, tragic story about what we do, which is also something that is like the big elephant in the room, is that we are plugins for a commercial piece of software called After Effects. You cannot get After Effects for free legally, and so so you already have to pay some money. So just already being an After Effects user, you've already been forced to pay money at some level. I mean, unless you're doing it in illegal ways, which obviously we will not address. And so the economic model as it exists today is very sustainable. We grow a lot all the time. We kept getting bigger and bigger. If anything, one of the challenges that I'm facing now, because it's a curated platform, meaning like we don't just accept any tool. I personally am the curator, and I decide this tool is going to be something we're going to accept. And in many cases, the tool needs work on some level or another. So either it's a brilliantly coded piece of work, but it doesn't have good branding, like we'll say the body moving example, And so I say, you need to have a good promo video. And in this case, he was very talented and was able to make a great video, but in some cases they can't do it themselves, and so we pair them together with a designer and to work on it. In some cases, they're good designers or have a good idea, but their code isn't so great, so then we help them with the code. But to remain at that level of curation, you can't expand in a huge manner. So that's the current challenge, is how do we maintain this sort of quality control and continue to be able to sustain the incoming, because I think the video is exploding on the web, right? Everybody has an Instagram channel, a YouTube channel, and everybody wants to create their own thing. So I think the user base of After Effects is growing in an exponential way today that it has not been before. So is it durable? So the question is even more complicated because there's also other competing platforms that are arising. There's Adobe themselves have now opened a marketplace where you can distribute your scripts and plugins. So why would you want to come to aescripts? So it was when Adobe released their store, it was such a crushing blow that I thought I should just pack up shop now, because in my mind, why would anybody not want to go directly to the mothership? But what's turned out is that, you know, Adobe's a large company and it's very bureaucratic, I guess, for lack of a better word. And so the focus, their store is not the same that I'm able to focus. So interestingly enough, since they came about, I think we've done even better. But whether that's to sustain forever, I don't know. You know, as a matter of fact, I've heard that venture capitalists will not invest in a startup if they don't own their own platform, right? So in our case, they would not invest in us because we don't own our own platform, right? But whether it's durable or not, you know, it's never. I've also always kind of gone day by day. I never thought I was going to get into this business. I opened the door and the light was bright and it was interesting and I walked in and I haven't looked back. And that's how I've always led my life. And then I'm sure there's going to be another door, and even solving these new problems are exciting and interesting in certain ways. And as part of this, I was an artist, I was a designer, and now I'm a businessman. And it really is depressing sometimes when I don't open an artistic tool all day, you know? So one of the things that I've really also tried to instill with what we do at aescripts is to not take ourselves too seriously. Of course, we want to portray a professional point of view, but also we want to remind people that that we are not business people. So in the United States, but I think it's spreading throughout the world. On April 1st, there's this thing called April Fools, which is tomorrow, or on Monday. And so for the last 3 years, we've been releasing a little April Fool's joke. And so the important thing is that we release a real tool. It really works. And so in past years, we had a tool that was called Make the Logo Bigger. It was a script it was a real script, and you install it, and you ran it in your project, and it would scan every single layer in your project, and it looked for the word logo. And if it found the layer with the word logo, it made it 20% bigger. And that was it. And so we released it as a really serious tool, and we put it up there, and people were like, "What?" And some people loved it, and some people hated it. But like that to me is the spirit of what we like to do. And last year we released one called the Baconizer, which would say it had a button that says that does your comp need more sizzle? And you would say yes, and then it would put an animated bacon strip on top of the comp. And so this is the world premiere where you guys are lucky. You're going to get to see it in advance of the tool we're going to release on Monday. So this is not released. Nobody has seen this before.
Hi and welcome to the extended coffee break tutorial. Here I have a composition and we've got some fractal noise, and it's caching immediately because there's no change and we can play that in real time, no worries. So let's fix that. What we do is we apply extended coffee break to this, and immediately we can see that this comp got a lot heavier and it is slowly rendering, chugging away. The great thing is that extended coffee break doesn't have any visual impact on your output. It's just going to make the render take a lot longer. So this is the CPU load here, and 0 is going to be not much load at all. You can see that, and you can set this quite high if you want a longer coffee break. You can see it's chugging away very slowly. So very simple to use. If you're fortunate enough to have the Enterprise Edition, this is where the real fun starts, because instead of just using the CPU, we can also leverage the GPU. And the benefit of that is if you're using the GPU, that means the user interface is going to get really chuggy and locked up, and that's going to be a really good excuse for you to not be able to do anything while your computer's rendering. So what I'll do is let's max this out and hit go. Then I'll go to the activity monitor and view the GPU history, and we can see that that's going to pretty much skyrocket, and that's going to slow you right down. I'll change that back to 0, and we go to the memory tab here, and we can increase After Effects memory usage. So for example, let's go back to activity monitor. We're looking at the memory tab here, and I'll just purge everything so that we can get a baseline reading. Alright, we're down to 430 megabytes. So let's say I want to use an extra 5 gigs. And now if we hit render on that, go to activity monitor, and immediately After Effects is going to start using huge amounts of memory. Very ideal if you're trying to slow things down. The problem being though is that After Effects is going to purge that when it runs out of memory. So if we go edit, purge all memory, we can see that the memory usage is going to return to normal, back to 400 megabytes. The beauty of this is we can cause a memory leak, and then that memory is pretty much going to be going down a black hole. We're not going to get it back. So now we're at 4.7 gigs, and if we go edit, purge all memory, we're not going to get that back. So even after purging, the memory's gone, we're not going to get it back. And that's ideal for us, so we can take a break. That's all the steps you need to have a really long coffee break. While you're enjoying your extended coffee break, make sure you check out plugineverything.com. We've got heaps of other products. Some of our products actually do something, and we've also got some free ones as well.
I should also note that the original idea was extended coffee break and get rich. The actual CPU cycles were going to be used for Bitcoin mining. But the actual logistics of actually really mining Bitcoin were really complicated, and so we didn't want to do it unless it was really, really mining Bitcoin, so we just did the coffee break. But okay, so the last question that you submitted was what are my plans? And I already kind of briefly touched on that we don't really have a very precise roadmap because it's kind of hard to do that because we never really know what's going to happen. But we've been slowly adapting with the times, how things go. When, for example, actually there's another question. Yeah, my take on Gumroad. So Gumroad is another competing platform, and it's venture capitalists, startup. There's tons of money, and their fees are really low, and they're very slick and stuff. And the reason that works is because they are working at scale, right? They have probably hundreds of thousands of users, if not more. And so you only need to make a little bit of money on each user to be able to make money to be able to sustain this whole thing. And we can't compete with that. So again, what we do is we focus on our little niche in the world and how can we make it better, and just continuing doing what we're doing. And we don't stop people from hosting their files on other places. That's the other thing. It's like I don't want to have an exclusivity agreement that's going to prevent you from doing what you want. That's like the last thing I would want to put somebody in. It's like the reason that we exist is because we want to help people, not because we want to get rich, and not because we want to force people into doing something. So we've always just kind of been doing our thing, and kind of going that way. And interestingly enough, some authors are more motivated to explore other avenues. Some of them have put their stuff on the Adobe Store and on other things, and most of the feedback we get is that it doesn't really work for them so well, but that's not by design or anything. It's just I think you just do things the way you think are right, and then either works or doesn't. And of course, we're always looking to modernize. We're actually in the process of redesigning our site completely because the last major redesign was in 2012. So part of it is to sort of bring it up to speed. As a matter of fact, our current site is not mobile ready, which back in 2012 was not a big deal. But now every day I get an email from Google that says it's not working in mobile, which doesn't really matter that much because you can't use After Effects and mobile. Well, sorry, you can use Rush or whatever, but not our plugins. So I never felt that it was hurting our business that much, so I never really prioritized it. But now that Google reminds me every day, we're like, okay, we'll make it compatible. I think this is the last question. So the relationship with Adobe has always been, I should say, my relationship with the After Effects team has been really good. I've been involved with After Effects since almost version 1.0. I think I started using it in version 1.5 when it was still COSA, and so I got to know, I should say, I know all of the founders, and I've known pretty much every product manager that After Effects has ever had. As a matter of fact, the current product manager, Victoria Nice, was an aescripts author before she got the job, which was pretty cool, and so she's brought a lot of attention to the sort of the lens of what we do in aescripts is we try to solve a lot of these problems that you can't do natively, and so she's brought that lens to the development team, which has been really cool to see. And you know, we are involved in the pre-release, and we give our feedback, and we also try to help. You know, like when we release a tool, a common comment that people post when we release a new tool is they go, "Oh my God, this is brilliant. Why is this not native?" Right? And that people love to ask that question. And so my answer is one of the reasons I think After Effects is such an amazing platform, and one of the reasons is because it's stayed relevant, and not just relevant. It is the market leader 25 years after it was created, which is, I don't even know how many software tools can claim that, is because of this open SDK sort of plugin architecture and third-party ecosystem, and also like listening to the community, right? So if somebody says, I need After Effects to be able to sort my layers from Z forward, not backwards, the After Effects can't just say, okay, I'll do it, but we can release a script that does that, right? So that one person can be satisfied. They can have their one button that does things their way. And so I always try to champion the fact that it is such a Swiss knife because of this is what makes it great. And if they tried to make everything that we make native, it would suddenly become bloatware, and it would be terrible. It would probably look like Microsoft Word. And so to ease the installation, we actually developed so we had been asking for them to do something natively, and I know that they've been working on doing something with their marketplace, but in the meantime, we created our own tool. Well, we've created two tools. We created the ZXP installer, which we opened up for any ZXPs to use, so you don't have to be one of our tools. And then if you have an account, then you can download our manager, which basically you log into, and this obviously has to work with your account because we just need to know what your license, because you had a graphic that showed like the horrible world of licenses and piracy and all that stuff, and it is accurate. Those things are a pain in the ass. So one of the things that we also work on is how to minimize that. So you can just, do this, and then you can just click install, and it would install all those, and then you can click license, and it would license all those, and that would be the end of it. And then if you turn on the preferences to be notified when there's a new version, you get a native OS notification that says new version of Newton is available. Do you want to install it? And then you would just open it and install it. And this is not perfect. It has its issues as well because we have to deal with so many different tools that are so many different things. But these are the kinds of things that we invest the money that we make into doing. How can we make the lives easier for the users, right? These kinds of things. I think that's it. That's my talk. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I want also to thank you, the people who sent the questions early, so we could send them to Lloyd. So now if other people have questions, it's the time for it. If you want to ask in French, we can translate it for Lloyd, if you prefer.
I'm cheating, I already have a mic. When you started aescripts, scripting was very, very small, and now today it's like the most important tool in our toolbox. How did plugin makers react to that? Did they try to acquire you or to come to be distributed on aescripts?
No. I don't think they took us seriously. I actually know most of them, so I was pretty close with all of them, and I don't think they considered us to be in the same league. That's the honest answer. But I would say that I will take some credit that we have improved the reputation of scripts, so that as a matter of fact, one of the things that is a little bit of a love-hate thing is our name has the word scripts in it, right? And if you bring a new tool to our platform, and your promo says, check out the latest script for After Effects, I actually say, please don't use the word script. Use the word tool. And the reason is because, again, from an end user perspective, it doesn't matter if it's a plugin or a script or an extension or a whatever. It's a tool that's going to help you solve a problem. And so if we can, as the platform moderators, if we can ease the installation process, because that's where really it matters, but if we can make it like with our tool, it doesn't separate between plugins and scripts. It's like all together. You want to install Newton, you select Newton, you hit install. And then we figure it all out in the background. And that's where we're trying to move. We're trying to move to their tools. And because After Effects users are not by nature very technical people. They're more like artists, or at least the ones that we sort of try to help, right? So yeah, I forgot what the initial question was, but I hope I answered it.
With all the tools that you have curated in the past few years, would you manage today to see an underlying pattern of trends in scripts and plugin developing?
Oh, definitely. There's there's tons of trends. If anything, I have to turn down tools that do something that you can already do with existing tools, and they go, oh, well, mine does it better. But one of the other things that we try to do on the site is, I don't know if you've ever had to buy a new television, for example. It is one of the most stressful experiences in the world, because you can't just go into the store and go, I'm going to buy this TV and feel satisfied, because there's 5 or 10 TVs that are exactly the same, have exactly the same specs. So you end up going on a website and reading the reviews, but some reviews are good and some reviews are bad. And it's like, and then you buy the TV and you're not really sure if it was the right TV. And so I really wanted to have the opposite experience of that. And so what we try to do is only have one tool that does that specific combination of function and workflow, so that if that's what you need and you come to our site, then you're going to be guaranteed to have a tool that's going to be satisfactory for that. As we've getting bigger and people come up with, like the most obvious one are these tools that do like delays or follow property kind of things, that I've now realized that there's a lot of different approaches to how to do the same thing. So the result is the same, but the workflow is different. So if the workflow is significantly different, then we'll accept it. But otherwise we turn it down. So we turn down a lot of tools. So I do see the trends behind the scene, but we try to only release a tool when it's such a big change or breakthrough or paradigm shift that we do it. Or in some cases, we've had also cases where, like the Plugin Everything guys did a realistic glow plugin, and we already had a realistic glow plugin, but the guys who did the old plugin were no longer working in After Effects, so they were no longer developing it. And these guys obviously were, so I asked the old guys, are you guys okay if we retire your plugin so we can replace it with a new plugin? And so we do stuff like that too. So now when you come and you want a realistic glow plugin, there's only one choice. Now, of course, there's people that are going to be upset no matter what you do, so that's another thing that you have to deal with. And I should also say that the other trend is that people are a lot more comfortable using scripts today, and you are a big part of people to thank for that as well, because in 2007, people refused to even open their ideas to that. They were like, no, I don't want it to break After Effects or whatever, you know. But when you create a tool that is so useful and so helpful and it makes your work that much better or faster, people come around to the idea, and you do that consistently, and you hopefully, you know, keep it up, then you've done your job. So, and that was the other thing, is that having somebody like you who is so good about this, that's why my question earlier about, you know, how do you actually sit down and get it done? And that to me is an amazing skill, and we're all very lucky to have people like you in our community that not just wants to do it, but actually does it. That's the one thing also that we struggle with, is that we have these really good ideas or these really good guys, and then they just fizzle off, you know? And I, early on, I thought, oh, well, the problem is money. If they make money, then they're gonna be motivated, but that's not always the case either. Other things get involved, so it's always great to have a good example, and so thank you for that.
Thank you, thank you. Actually, I wanted to say something.
Sure.
Is that people always ask me why Duick is not on aescripts, and what's my take about name your own price, right? Why is not Duick name your own price? There are a lot of reasons. I'm struggling to explain because it's difficult, because the reason which I was stating this morning is just that it's I use Duick as a way to show my political views, and I can't do it on aescripts. I'm not going to add my propaganda on aescripts. But more seriously, the true reason is that when I released Duick, aescripts did not exist. It was in 2008, and Duick grew very quickly. I translated it the first month, and it kind of became famous very quickly before I knew aescripts, actually. So when I was aware there was this platform, it was already kind of too late to move Duick to aescripts. It was not necessary. It would have been more work, because I would have need to do this video, these promotions and everything, and I didn't want, and I didn't have time to do this. But if I was developing Duick now, I definitely would be on aescripts. I'm sure of this. Clearly, I think I would do something like Body Movie did, keeping it free software, of course, because this is what I want. But Duick would be on aescripts, that's for sure. And I'm really admirative of everything you did. And all of this work, it's amazing. And I know this is a lot of work. When I hear you speaking, everything you said is something I have experienced also. So this is just very interesting. I'm just realizing each one of us, script developers and everything, we have the same problems, we have the same issues, and we finally have the same solutions too. So and thank you for all of this, because more than me, you managed to have this community. You have so many people from different countries, different horizons, coming into the same place and working together. And this is what makes aescripts something very special and so awesome. Also, this work you do to curate all the scripts, which makes it a very good platform. And when we get something on aescripts, we know it's going to work, it's going to be nice. Instead of Gumroad or all these websites where there is no curation and you don't know what you're getting. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I should also say that, you know, as you know, we've never really said you must come on our platform. I think Duick is able to live on its own because people, as a matter of fact, you would actually probably be traffic for us as opposed to the other way around, right? So I think that the benefits of, especially like you said, early on, is that you can benefit from a destination that people know about when they might not know about your tool. But once you know, once you're famous and stuff, it's like, so. And thank you for the kind words.